Welcome to the podcast. As we both know, we're both very pumped to be here and having this conversation. You do some amazing work and it's very creative and it's very special to your own personal story. So, with that being said, I'm going to hand the floor over to you. Please introduce yourself to our viewers and tell me a little bit about of substance, what that is, and how you kind of got there. And then we'll just kind of roll with the punches at that point.
Cool. Casey, thanks. It's amazing to be on this podcast. I'm so happy to be here. Hi, everybody. I'm Alex Kaplan. I am the founder and executive director at Of Substance. We are an innovative organization that makes and collects premium, entertaining short films, romantic comedies, thrillers, horror that are all 5 to 10 minutes, that all have an angle on shame, mental health, addiction, trauma, isolation, all everything that lies under that umbrella. But what makes us a little bit different is how we provide it. What we do is we deliver it on a platform to mental health professionals to use as provocative tools to enhance treatment and expedite outcomes in therapy, in rehab, in hospitals, in schools, in prisons, and beyond. So that's me. Hi.
Perfect. Summed it up perfectly. All right. So, you gave us the short bit. Now people want to know, how in the world did you get to this? And you can start from whatever point, in your personal story that you have. Are we to assume that you have a history with recovery and addiction?
Yes. I when I was 23, I'm 38 now. I'm 38 now. When I was 23, my father passed away, and I was raised very wealthy. I'm a very lucky, privileged person. I was raised very wealthy, and on the day that my father passed away, I gave his eulogy, and then found out that we were tens of millions of dollars in debt. Not because of anything shady, just it was 2009, and everything went to hell. So on that one day, I lost everything that made me feel safe and anchored in this world. And so I didn't know what to do, and I ran away and I numbed. I started drinking as much as I possibly could and doing as much cocaine as it's not, my body wouldn't allow it, but I still pushed it. And over the next 4 years, I kept disappearing more and more. I was an actor in New York. Really, I was a bartender. I wasn't acting. I was just drinking, doing drugs. And after 4 years, I got really lucky, and my best friend said something to me that finally broke through the force field that was my brain. And he asked me why I was doing this, and for some reason that's what I needed to hear. That woke me up. I realized, hey, I'm still here. I'm alive. I'm not dying. This isn't really making me feel better. And by asking me, why are you doing this, it opened up this notion in my mind that maybe there was a different choice. I didn't know that there was a choice. I just accepted this for what it was. It is what it is. And I didn't realize that there was something I could do about it. After that, I moved home to Philadelphia from New York for the summer, which ended up being 7.5 years, to seek help for myself and seek treatment and just see what I could do. I went to a couple of 12-step meetings, which really didn't work for me. And I don't think that it's because of the program. I think that each program has its pros and cons, but really, underlyingly, it's about the community you find. And unfortunately, the rooms I found were populated with people who may not have been drinking, but they definitely weren't finding serenity. They were very miserable, and I watched them as this 29-year-old, and I was just like, if you want me to do the hardest thing that I'm ever going to do, just to be as unhappy as you guys are, you've got to be out of your mind. And so I left after 2 meetings, and I sought help from a substance abuse therapist at Penn, and which was just a bit more traditional. And I was making progress, and I recognized that I was making progress. And one day I came in and I was so excited, and I was hopeful for the first time in a long time. And I told her that last night I had 2 beers, and it didn't lead to more than that, and it didn't lead to a binge. and me disappearing for a week or two, which I know isn't perfect, but I felt positive for the first time in 5 years. And her immediate response was, well, let's focus on what you did wrong, which I understand. But something inside just told me, like, I am sinking in quicksand of shame. And your response is to throw a wet weighted blanket of more shame on me. And that didn't work for me. And so I was ready to give up. And luckily, somebody gave me the number. My mom gave me the number. Long story. I'll skip that part of this very progressive doctor who ran his own private group in the burbs of Philly. And I started to go, and I went for the consultation, for the 30-minute consultation, which ended up being 3 hours because we just really hit it off. And I'll never forget these three main things that Jim brought up. First thing was, Alex, life is a patchwork quilt. And right now, the only patch you have is addiction. Our job is not to get rid of that patch. Instead, it's to create more patches and add more patches to that quilt of family, of friends, of relationships, of hobbies, of career, of passions. So that over time, as we add more patches to that quilt, that one patch of addiction gets relatively smaller, and we build out a life full of quality and a life worth living. And I was like, hey man, that's amazing. It's hopeful. That's everything I want to hear. You got me. I'm in. So he's like, okay. So the second thing, first thing we do in this room is we learn to look in the mirror and stop looking through society's lenses where we see a junkie, a drunk, a cokehead, a fuck up, and instead learn to look through your own compassionate eyes full of empathy and see somebody with a human with infinite potential and infinite possibility and deserving of everything. I'm like, dude, you got me. I'm in. And so he's like, okay, cool. So the third thing is, in this room, we actually don't really say the words recovery. We don't say the words relapse. We don't say the word relapse, and we don't count days. In this room, the main lesson that we work on is that it's not about learning how not to fall, but rather about learning how to pick yourself up better and better each time, which is not just the lesson of getting sober, that's the lesson of life, right? That's how we grow. That's how my 2-year-old learned to walk and stand, not by like falling on his butt the first time and not getting back up because he should be ashamed of himself, but rather falling on his butt, laughing and trying again. And so that's how I got sober. That's the room I got sober in. It took, I would go every Tuesday night because my issue was cocaine. It wasn't drinking yet, right? And so it's just like I needed to quit drinking. I mean, I needed to quit cocaine because drinking was not a problem. And I went every Tuesday night. And my first Tuesday night, I'd come in and I'd be like, I already fucked up. I I got some drugs this week and I'm still coming down from it now. And and the response in the room was, Alex, you're actually doing everything right, because it's not about not doing it, it's about coming here and telling us about it, right? Like that's the hardest thing, is coming and breaking this habit of hiding and lying and running away. So we're really proud of you and we're proud you're here. And thank you for sharing with us. That was incredibly brave and courageous. And I was just floored with like that response. And so I left and got more drugs. And the next week came back and told them the same thing. They were just like, it's okay. You're doing everything right. You're showing up, you're coming here, you're growing, even though you feel like you're not. And being met with that response of credit versus a response of judgment was something that built internally over time. My voices like started to emulate and mirror the voices from the room that just gave me credit when I make a mistake. And so it took 2 years to finally, I don't know when I stopped doing drugs, but it took 2 years of just coming back and making mistakes and doing better and picking myself back up and falling down and making it a little bit longer to finally not using any drugs. And then it's after I stopped using the drugs after 2 years that I recognized I was using alcohol the same way I used to use cocaine. So I knew what I needed to do. I came into the room and I was like, guys, I've been lying, like unintentionally, but well, intentionally, but I didn't mean to, like, I you know, My brain was doing the thing that our brains do. I've been drinking. And so it took another 2 years of testing my relationship with alcohol to finally get to a point where it was a month after my wedding. And my wife found some little nibs in my jacket pocket, those little ounce bottles of Jack or whatever it was. And she was just like, I got into the habit of, as long as I told my wife the truth, it was okay. Right. And whenever she would go out of town or I would go out of town, I was planning 6 months in advance, like what I was going to be drinking, how I was going to be drinking. Like that's how we do it. And so she found these bottles and she let me know. She stopped me and she said, "Alex, I love you, and I'm deeply appreciative that you're always open and honest with me. I am starting to fear leaving you alone because this is becoming a new habit, and I'm afraid of it." And yada yada yada. We had already broken up and gotten back together 3 times, and I realized, like, sometimes it takes losing something to realize how much you love it. Luckily, I got to do that 3 times, and I'm the luckiest guy in the whole world. And she told me that day, she's just like, what's happening is like there's a chasm growing between us, and eventually that chasm is going to become unmendable. And it was in that moment on October 28th, 2017, that I realized I can drink and I can drug anytime I want, but I can never drink or drug again without consequence. And so that's the day I got sober. So that's my sobriety story. In the meantime, when I moved home from Philly to get sober, I got really lucky, and a friend of mine had started a production company. I asked him if I could be on set. He also happens to be sober, and I asked him if he could help me out. Then I asked him to be on set. He said, sure. So I came on as an intern in like a 3-person company, and I learned everything about client management, client relations, producing, directing, writing, everything I didn't know yet about like running a company, building a company, running teams, managing teams, and also creating content from a non-actor perspective. So over the next 7 years, we took that company from 3 people to a 20-person company where I was the managing executive producer, running teams with major clients and leading the market as one of the top 3 production companies in the region. And so it was in building that and doing commercials that I hired an actor like the day before a commercial. He's in the makeup chair for this commercial, and we were just shooting shit. We hit it off, and he's like, honestly, I just want to make things that I care about. I'm like, me too. I'm making all of this corporate stuff that just doesn't really matter. It's selling things I don't believe in. It's questioning my integrity and my values. And if you're working in production, it takes a lot of work. It only pays so much. You better be doing it for something you care about. So he and I came together and we made a short film in the summer of 2017. It's in making that short film we found out we were both struggling with addiction. And so we decided to go drinking together, which is kind of just what you do when you do that, I guess. And we're at the bar and we're just talking about the very authentic humor and irony of the situation of us doing this. And Brian's like, this would be a great short film. I was like, you're out of your goddamn mind. Or he's like, this would be a great short film. I'm like, you're right. It would be a great short film. He's like, we should make it. That's when I said, you're out of your goddamn mind. Short films are the greatest prop with no market and no ROI. They have no purpose, but they take friends and family and favors and money and time and blood and sweat and tears. And they don't go anywhere. There's nothing to do with them. So I'm like, I'm not doing it. So over the next 6 weeks, it keeps coming up. That'd be another good one about addiction. That'd be another good one. That'd be another good one. And so 6 weeks later, Brian is just like, okay, dude, hear me out. What if we had a channel? Like, what if we started with a YouTube channel where we kept adding more and more shorts, where every short needed to be and we came up with rules, as high in quality, entertaining, and immersive as they were challenging, authentic, and insightful on some perspective of addiction. As soon as he said that, we started to immediately see the field. We saw how this could become something that wasn't a collection of movies or short films, but rather a haven and a toolkit where people could go in an instant in an approachable and immersive and captivating way that's not aggressive and very inviting to then go and watch a short. Let's say you're at work and everybody's going out for a happy hour afterward, and you don't want to call your sponsor and you don't want to go to a meeting. You could just go to our YouTube channel of Substance and you could watch a 5-minute comedy that says fuck, and it makes you laugh and it doesn't patronize you by hitting you over the head with a message, and you can just get immersed in life, but also that somebody else is going through what you're going through and feels as isolated or hopeless or as much shame as you do. And so you'll watch it and be like, ah, that was great. Oh, you know what? I'm good. I'm back to work. That's where the whole idea started. And in making these films, we started to see how these could be really great tools. We realized that movies are more than anything, movies are a provocative tool to start deeper conversations because they have a magical ability to prime us emotionally and vulnerably. The issue is with feature films, we just watch movies or we binge watch shows and we feel our feelings and we feel them in a box and there's nowhere to put them. Sometimes they enlighten us, sometimes they inspire us, and that's wonderful. But that doesn't happen enough. And we need to capitalize on that power that they have. So what we do is we have realized that it's about marrying film and progressive intentional growth systems. So what we do is we think that it's about showing a film and then following that up with a class, a lesson, a training, or a therapy session or treatment, right? So allow the movie to do what it does. Let a movie heighten your emotional senses so that you can get to a point and then allow that framed conversation to do the work now that you are ready to listen at a deeper level. And yeah, it's so long. I feel like I went off the rails, but I hope you guys got it. I know we're going to talk about more stuff, but that's that's hi. I'm Alex. How's it going?
I'm beaming. I love it so much. So, okay. And don't worry, there was no off railing there. My thought next, and I'm curious about this. So, first off, where did Of Substance, like the name, come from?
Yeah. The name of the substance is just kind of funny. We had this idea and we're just like, well, we need a name. And so Brian and I were like hashing it out. What's the name? And Brian thought of like People of Substance, like and then Men of Substance. And we were looking things up, and it's just like it's not just Men of Substance. And Brian's just like, what about Of Substance? I'm like, oh, that's great. Katie, my wife, was on the couch. I'm like, Katie, what do you think of Substance for the name? She's like, I don't think so. We're like, oh no, we think we really like it, but Katie doesn't like it, so we can't do it. And then like we're bashing our heads against the wall and we're ping ponging it back and forth for a while. And a month later, we're both just like, I really like Of Substance. And she's like,
Yeah.
Katie, you really don't like Of Substance? She's like, oh, that sounds great. I love it. I'm like, what? So that's a funny story behind it, but God, we love that name. Everybody loves that name. It's so much fun,
Yeah.
and we've evolved our offerings recently. And no matter what we do, it will always encapsulate what we do and what we stand for and our values. We're used to watching content and videos all the time, and especially with what we watch in forums like classrooms and trainings and therapy, it's always just videos, right? We're going to watch this video. We make mini movies. We make pieces that make you want to just jump on the couch with a big bowl of popcorn and get lost. And that's what's different about our offerings, that we're not coming at you with like, here's what you need to know. We're not coming at you with like a low quality, a low budget, low production value piece where you're just like the color's blown out, the dialogue is terrible. Like it's all just like everything that we don't like about those videos is what we don't make. And that's why we call them mini movies.
And that's what makes you different, right? It's not just content. It's directive and it has a lot of work behind it, which we've talked about before. There's planning, there's timelines, there's finding actors and people that can help. And a lot of these folks are giving their time and their energy to something that usually doesn't have much like direction behind it or demand. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually, I mean, they do, but like the intention of what's being built and what's expected from a film that's going into a learning situation is that it needs to do both story and hammer you over the head with a point or a lesson, or a call to action. And I think that when we marry those two, it undermines both. And so that's why what we do is we just make mini movies that don't do any of that. It's just a mini movie that makes you laugh, makes you cry, makes you jump, makes you get scared, but also subconsciously allows you to relate to that main character and their feelings of insecurity, their feelings of shame, their moments of overcoming adversity. And then once that's primed, it's up to the teacher, the therapist, to then frame that and bring home the lesson so that we don't undermine the power of that film. That's what we do differently, right? And what we find is that these films being used as emotionally priming tools allows for therapists who statistically what we read, research shows that it takes 5 to 15 sessions to finally get to start to get patients and clients to open up, to really start talking about these things. Our films prime them instantaneously to get them to a place to start opening up about the things that we don't usually talk about. So when I say enhance treatment and expedite outcomes of emotional growth and behavioral change, that's what I mean.
So tell me more about like you said in therapy sessions, but you also mentioned, previously that there are other settings that your mini movies have an impact and are relevant. So tell me more about kind of like the spectrum of where you find your work, and your, of substance teams work is applicable.
Absolutely. Primarily, it's within the therapeutic system, right? The system of intentional uh, mental healing, right? And so, what we that's who we want using our films more than anyone. But the thing is, it just like it can span so many different struggles, right? So we have a piece called Trapped that's about a woman who is newly sober and doing well with her leaving her brother at lunch, saying goodbye. And it's kind of funny. He's a goofball. And her feeling really good about him being proud of her for being sober. And then her leaving to walk by the bar and having the bar call her back because it's glowing and it's beautiful, like so many of those bars we see. And just her back and forth relationship, just looking at the bar and then shaking it off and going to leave, smashing into a white wall. And then the whole film going back and forth between the bar of the reality and her experience of being trapped in a void and unable to get away from the bar until finally, like, she hits that wall, back wall, and there's no way out but through. And goes up to the bar, raises her hand, blackout. And it's a very visceral experience. But that film, even though it seems to be about substance misuse, abuse, it seems to be about relapse and addiction. It's called Trapped. And that piece, I use that piece when I engage and I talk to groups of entrepreneurs to talk about imposter syndrome, to talk about what makes them feel trapped in their journeys. They don't have to struggle with substances to relate to that woman's situation. And so that's how we can use that for people who are we can use trapped for people struggling with like postpartum depression, to PTSD, to bipolar disorder, and really anything, and for all different groups, from white people to black people to Jews and Palestinians to Democrats and Republicans. right? It's for all of us. And that's the magic of these pieces. Um, the other thing that we harp on is we deliver them very differently. We make them available on a platform that we push out to mental health professionals. It's a free platform. You go to ofsubstance.org and you sign up for a free account, and you're able to access all of our films. They are totally geared toward the mental health professional, and we deliver them. Once you click into a film, next to that film, you'll see the genre, the log line, the synopsis, but then also here are themes and topics and ways that you can use this film with your patients. So we really gear it toward you guys in that way. We also, but our films are licensed to. They're licensed to other digital platforms that are doing algorithmic self-guided mental health support. They're licensed to several universities across the country, but not in the way that you might expect. The way that they're like that people find us mostly are social worker or psych department heads who want to incorporate our films into their classrooms to help with training their therapy students, their psych students, their social work students. They are tools for compassion and empathy training, right? These pieces are used in hospitals with doctors, and they're used in med schools to help build bedside manner, right? And so it's about humanizing the patient while also being used as a tool to help the patient humanize themselves.
You have highlighted that these aren't just, mini movies that are targeted directly at those that are experiencing relapse or recovery. No, 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 no. They're applicable in all sorts of situations where there's mental healing involved. And that is something that is really challenging in what we do in this field, because to encompass everything that falls under this umbrella of human services, that's hard. That's really, really hard, because we also, unfortunately, and I've probably mentioned this on almost every single episode we've had thus far, there's so many silos because we are taught to focus specifically on our niche or our specialty. And so we find that we have trapped ourselves in pockets where we're not sharing tools like this. And we're not highlighting that there's like a kind of like a comorbidity, co-diagnosis situation people are finding themselves in when they, are in these seasons of their life, let's call them. And that's grand. I hope that's so exciting that I hope that our viewers can grasp the concept that this is probably applicable either in their own personal life or the work that they're trying to establish, which is fantastic. And my next question is, how have you seen that kind of play out with professionals? I mean, do you get that feedback from people? Whatever, however they may be using your movies, your mini movies in their work?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm here on this podcast because Christian Williams,
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Williams, the president of NOHS, reached out to me to be part of the conference this year because she has been using our films without me even knowing in her own practice for the past 2 to 3 years. And she wants to help do exactly what you're talking about and share these and spread these and make sure that resources like these are being utilized and being shared and spreading throughout the mental health system, just to help improve outcomes for all of us. So yeah, I think that's one of my favorites, is just like people find them and reach out to us just like to let us know that they are changing their work and their lives. We There's something else I would say. Oh, you talking about comorbidities. It's really funny. So I just got back from a film festival. I go to a lot of film festivals because our films are mini movies. They're short films that go to film festivals that also go into these systems. And so many people are making incredible films about body dysmorphia and like women's health and menstruation and miscarriage and so many different things that we don't talk about, that we're going to start acquiring all of these films, and loading up the platforms, and also categorizing and organizing them. We are actually launching we're rebooting the platform within the next few months. The back end looks like Netflix, kind of. It's so cool. Like it's awesome. We're really excited, but we're also trying to load up the platform with more and more content, that even though a piece might be about women's health and getting your period, it's really about shame. And so, like, it might be, if you have somebody who's really into Jane Austen or just like period comedy, no joke, that's actually what it's called. It's called Jane Austen's period drama. And it's hilarious. It's one of the greatest comedies I've seen. But when you watch it, it's just like, oh my God, like I can relate to that, whether I get my period or like I don't feel like talking about something about my body or how I feel. That can be applicable in so many different ways. So we're collecting those. But the reason I started talking about this, hi, good morning, lots of coffee, is because I clearly I struggle with ADHD quite a bit. And hi, sup, buddy. I have so many filmmakers approach me at these film conferences, like brilliant filmmakers who make these amazing films. They come up to me, they're like, I'd love to work with you. Do you ever think you'd do something about ADHD? And I'm like, of course we would do something about ADHD. And the more conversations I have about ADHD, the more comes up about just like, I'm not bipolar, and like I'm not manic, or I am manic and I'm bipolar. And I never thought that it was this and that. And I thought I was stupid and I thought I was this. But the experience of ADHD is really interesting because it's just, it's to me, in all that I've seen, it's kind of the archetype of a struggle that is riddled with comorbidities, right? And so it's just like, we can make a piece about ADHD that allows my very A-type non-ADHD wife relate to in her own struggles with perfectionism, right? Um, and so yeah, you brought up comorbidities, and I've been thinking about that for the past like 3 days. Just like, how am I going to play this game? And like, yeah,
The difference between what you're creating and what already kind of exists, whether it be nonfiction or fiction, right? Is that stepping outside of the box and intentionally helping or, channeling those feelings in a direction that is either has to do with improvement or confidence or compassion or healing or even professionalism, because this again is a way for, therapists and counselors and social workers and so on, to create a safe space. And that's a different environment than, just standalone experiences, emotional and non-emotional, relatable and non-relatable things that we find, from other films.
that's so well said. And you make me think about how like people mirror the behavior with which they're approached, right? Like if somebody approaches you kind of closed up and cold, you mirror that, right? But if somebody approaches you vulnerably, you often just somebody leads with vulnerability, you show vulnerability in turn. And I think that movies are so interesting because they are innately vulnerable, right? They are a very vulnerable experience. So if you are introduced to a film that leads with vulnerability because it gets into the mindset and the truth of a human's experience, then it's almost impossible not to follow that up with your own vulnerability. And so these films are just provocative tools that are vulnerable triggers that prime people to an emotional point that are going to open them up vulnerably. We also use our films, and we have professionals using our films in prisons and in schools with um, with communities that are traditionally less open to being vulnerable and sharing things emotionally. And the way that they work there is movies. What they find happens is like they might watch one of our pieces. They might watch Trapped, that piece I talked about with the white walls. And somebody might not say, well, that makes me feel, but instead they might say, well, this is what's happening up there. She's going through this, and this is what's happening with the brother and why she did that, which is completely just unveiling what they're going through and the way they see the world. So these films can work as foils to allow us to circumvent that guard that we all have up. The other thing that's really interesting about what we do is movies create this inescapable emotional experience, right? In fact, I think they fabricate a real emotional experience, which is the state and when we best learn and internalize a new idea. It's like when we experience something emotionally, we that thought, that idea, that moment is just, it's sown so deeply, it's burned into our mind. And so if we are able to fabricate real emotional experiences for people while they just sit in front of their screen and then talk to somebody about something deeper, we're able to use that film as the soldering that takes that lesson or that idea or that moment with the therapist and really burn that into that deeper part of their mind.
As a creative yourself in the work that you do, that relationship, tell me from your perspective why, the creative processes that we find ourselves enjoying and feeling vulnerable in are relevant to, mental health and human services as a whole.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a traditional mental health professional. I think most people have experienced that movies, story, has shaped the way that I have grown, have learned to engage with people, has shaped my values, what feels right from wrong, um, and and so I think that whether we intellectualize it or we come from an emotional side, it's just we can't help but be like, that works. Why, right? And and so I think luckily the mental health field is starting to open up and think a little bit more innovatively. Uh, I think a struggle is what I learn in storytelling is that the brain can either be uh, engaged in an emotional sense or an intellectual sense, like primarily at any given time. When we're engaged intellectually in thoughts and consideration and practicality, our guard goes up. We're less open to new ideas. We're stuck in our ways, and we are more combative. But when we are engaged emotionally, that guard goes down. We're more compassionate. We're more empathetic. We're more open to new ideas, to ideas that we've ignored forever. Like so, so that's the thing is, and that's what art does, and that is the perfect marriage of art and the intellectual journey of intentional growth and through thought and practicality and practice is utilizing art to engage us in those feelings of struggle, because from struggle begets overcoming adversity, which engages us in a feeling of pride, in a feeling of a sense of admiration for ourselves. And so if we can do that, then that's when change happens, right? No matter what we have to say, you can bash me over the head, I'll never forget. I will never forget the moment when Rocky Five was in theaters, something like that. I'm from Philly. Rocky Five was in theaters when he's older and he runs a restaurant, and a young 20-year-old wants to fight him. And it's halfway through the movie, and his older grown son is just like so embarrassed about this whole thing. He's embarrassed how it reflects on him. He's like, "You should be ashamed, Dad, Rocky Dad," and he's like, and he's yelling at him. And Rocky, it's amazing how many people know this quote. It always comes up, and everybody knows this quote. But Rocky's like, "Life's not about how hard you can hit. Life's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward." The number of people who quote that, or when I tell this story and they're just like, "Oh yeah," and they beat me to the quote, it's amazing. But it's just like, personally, the movie was over. We got up. I'm with my dad. And he's like, "What do you think?" I'm like, "Wow, Dad, I loved it." And that moment where he said, you know, Life's not about how hard you can hit, but how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. It's just like, that's amazing. And my dad's like, I fucking told you that 1,000 times in your life. I'm like, well, I never heard it. I wasn't engaged emotionally in the way that movies engage us emotionally, so that we're like ready to hear things a certain way. And clearly that's true of the abundance of other people who heard that same line. And that same line has driven them, because I'm sure people in their lives and books that they've read and things that they've done and therapists they've seen have told them the same thing. But it's
Mm-hmm.
magic of, we have so much art therapy, we have music therapy, we have so many of those things. And cinema therapy is not a new thing. But what we're doing is we're reinventing. Do you not know cinema therapy?
No, you just took me aback. I've never heard that before.
Cinema therapy is not a new practice. We're reinventing cinema therapy. The thing about cinema therapy is people take movies like in rehab. Like, it's just like, people tell me in rehab, they're just like, oh my god, this is so great. People who are in rehab and people counseling in rehab are just like, this is so cool. I can't. I don't know if I can watch 28 Days again, the Sandra Bullock film about being in recovery, because it's just like, they know, like, it's a good tool, but there's only so many films you can watch, and they're all 90 minutes, and it's just like, it's exhausting. So like what we're doing, and some people, like, sometimes you take the first 5 minutes of Up, you know, the first 5 minutes of Up, which is this beautiful, sad story about these kids who come together and they fall in love and they adventure is out there and they go together of life, until like finally 5 minutes in, they're already really old and she dies and he's left alone with his life. And everybody is bawling, crying in tears in the theater every time. And it's just like, that's amazing. So people use 5 minute bits of films to like do something and engage people. Nobody has ever found a way to just make full pieces that are 5 to 10 minutes that are made for you to use as tools in cinema therapy, right? Just the same way that you would give somebody a song or a track to listen to that has particular lyrics that ignite and prime you emotionally so that you're ready to talk. We're doing the same thing with film, which I believe is going to take everything to a different level. What was the
How's it
question?
sort of be on the forefront of something that changes people's lives in a way that most people haven't seen before?
It's fucking terrifying. It is. It's so terrifying because, and it's so funny. I was talking about this at this film festival where people are just like, wow, so you're not really in film, you're in mental health. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in mental health. And it's wild because in this day and age, those of us who are kind of startup founders and entrepreneurs in the mental health space, we are most at risk of our mental health than most people, because we're fighting against the grain to do innovative things to help people, and we feel like there's so much purpose behind it that we break ourselves to not sleep, to figure it out, to do it with so little resources, that it's just like, and I won't stop. I think that's what I'm most
Yes.
scared of. Is I know this is big. I know this is going to change the world, because I know that this is not about mental health as much as it's about our humanity. And I think that that's the thing with movies. Is the biggest thing I learned in getting sober is that my issue is not about using substances. It's about why I used substances. It's about shame. It's about a fear of not belonging. And it's about a fear of not being good enough and a sense of inadequacy, none of which is unique to addiction. That's just part of being a person, right? Movies allow us to see that, relate to other people's humanity and those universally relatable feelings of shame, of falling down, of relapsing, of overcoming adversity, of isolation, of connection, of love, of hate, of all of it. And just to see each other's humanity. So if this works for helping people struggling with addiction and bipolar disorder, why wouldn't this work to help build bridges across aisles in Congress, across religious divide, across across the Gaza Strip? Why wouldn't this help us to humanize each other in a way that just finally gets us to put down our metaphorical and literal guns, so that we kind of okay, so my goal is world peace through movies. Like that's my big goal. I know that there is just so much power and so much potential in this product. It's a product. That's what it is. But it's just like right now this product has been utilized to make money and make more money, and so like we're so thirsty for real stories and real movies like we used to get, that inspired us, that made us excited, that were new, that made us think, that made us feel, that got us talking about them at the office and at church and at synagogue and at the mosque and on the corner and everywhere. Like we're thirsty for those. But movies are now about like the bottom line. It's about making money. It's about the blockbuster, and it's about just feeding people what we think they'll pay for and they want to hear. But the problem with that is that we're all trying to make something that we think others want to hear instead of trying to make something that's true to us. However, James Joyce said that in the particular lies the universal. And to me, what that means, in the particular lies the universal. And to me, what that means is the more honest and authentic and genuine we are with what we think and we feel and what we experience, the more surprised we'll be that the majority of other people will identify with that and agree. But because we're just trying to pander to other people and make something that's going to make money or somebody's going to buy and pay for, we're just adding to this homogenous commercial landscape where everything looks the same. There's nothing new and there's nothing challenging that really pushes us forward as individuals, as families, as communities, as the human race. And so, yeah, how do I feel about being at Forefront? I feel I'm so excited. I'm so excited, but I'm so scared all the time. But it's also it's exciting and it is lonely and it's terrifying, but it is just the most wonderful thing I could be doing with my life. And nothing feels better than every time somebody comes up to me so inspired, asking how they can help and really understanding exactly what we're doing and realizing that as lonely as I feel, I am not alone. Okay.
I think that's a beautiful point to end on. And Alex, you got me my feels. Oh my goodness. Twice today, which is good enough for me. Just so send me the invoice for that therapy session.
Fair.
I appreciate you coming on and talking us through this, and you've made an impact on me, and that's, probably slightly easier because I'm a creative myself, but I digress. Your work is super important. And as lonely as that front of the line can feel, I know, and I know that looking back and saying, hey, look over here, like, look what I've got to show you. Like, you've got plenty of people that are saying, check this guy out. Are y'all seeing this over here? So, and that's a great feeling because then we're humans. We want validation of the things that we're making for each other and ourselves. It's universal. Right. And so thank you so much for coming on the podcast and giving us your side of that experience and why it's important to what we do in human services.
Thank you. Thanks, Casey. Thanks for having me. And I just want to say, anybody interested, our product, our programming, our everything, it's a free resource right now. So please take advantage of it. Just go to ofthesubstance.org and go to sign up, and you make a free account. That's it. Put your email and your password, and you'll have access to all of our films. Right now, I think there's 10 on there, and we've got like 5 more coming in, like originals right now. And we're starting to acquire from filmmakers who are just like, please take my film. I just wanted to help people. So hop on there, please get using it. And it's nice to have you as part of the Of Substance family.
Special thanks to our guest, Alex Kaplan. You can discover Of Substance online at www.ofsubstance.com. Are you or someone you know interested in joining us at the round table? Let's talk about it. Connect with the team at info@nationalhumanservices.org. You can find all our roundtable conversations on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the iHeartRadio app. Be sure to follow us on social media and check out our website for everything NOHS.